Good afternoon, guys. Jen will be along in just a minute, and we are going to have a very special guest this afternoon. Decided to do it as a live stream and rather than just a podcast because I think a lot of people have some questions, especially here in South Florida, as it pertains to the issues we've been having with COVID. I believe today in Miami-Dade alone, there were 2,000 new cases for COVID-19. This thing is really out of control, and it's only going to get worse, especially in the winter months. It does get a little nippy down here in South Florida, although definition of what nippy is to most people around the country is a lot different than what it is here. So nippy around here is in the 50s. But we're getting it. It may even get into the 40s at one point. Can you believe it? No snow, though. We don't get snow here in South Florida. So for those of you on the stream now, hit the like button. I'm going to put that in the chat. And the thing that I want to talk about before Dr. Eric Feigl-Ding comes on our live stream is something that's been going on lately, which is causing a very major rift within the left political circles, which is, of course, this issue about whether or not we bring a Medicare for All vote to the floor, regardless of whether it passes right now. The important thing to remember is that it is a very popular policy without a pandemic. You add the pandemic in, and I do think we're at a point now where it needs to be, the way I look at it is this. It's very simple. When it comes to the issue of Medicare for All, a lot of the people who watch CNN and MSNBC, for example, and obviously Fox News, but that goes without saying, they are not really informed, if you will, as to the fine print details when it comes to something like Medicare for All. You know, what Jen and I always emphasize when it comes to Medicare for All is a very simple concept. We are eliminating the for-profit middlemen in between you and your doctor. This is something that must be emphasized unequivocally. And I understand that there's a lot of hesitancy to want to go forward with something like this at this time, if for no other reason, because of the fear that it will not only not pass, but it will be shellacked, if you will. But I have another theory in that people really do need to know where their representatives stand on such a monumental issue that overwhelmingly people do support. And let's face it, most people are not really informed about Medicare for All. They don't actually have much of a clue as to how it actually works. There's this fear that it's a one-size-fits-all situation where, you know, the government runs the healthcare system, doctors can't make a certain amount of money. That's not how this works. What we're doing is eliminating a for-profit component that does not add value to overall healthcare outcomes. That is what we're trying to do. And so at the end of the day, there is no question that that is going to become the central focus going forward, is how do we deliver a very concise message about what the type of healthcare system we're looking to have. We are not looking to cap doctors' capability of making an income. We're not trying to take away a for-profit motive when it comes to actually providing a service. What we are trying to do is take away a for-profit component of the healthcare system that has no reason to exist. And I think unequivocally, most people would agree with that if they had people on the floor of the House, whether it's AOC, Ro Khanna, Cori Bush, Marie Newman, Mondaire Jones, Jamal Bowman, and Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar.
Right, can we talk? Can we introduce our guest? Because before he gets here, like talk stuff about him.
I'm segueing into that.
All right.
So anyway, being able to talk about that issue, I think, is going to be tantamount to whether or not we can really advance the national discussion as far as that is concerned. So we have a very special guest this afternoon who is, I would say, probably as well-versed in the medical field as anybody.
Well, I mean, no, and that's what's interesting. I think his background is very interesting. He's an epidemiologist at Harvard. His primary focus historically has been nutrition and cancer. And so he has... did you say who it was that we were speaking with?
I mentioned his name, but you can mention it again.
So Eric Feigl-Ding, I think that's how you say it. It's hyphenated, but I will ask. But so he's gotten a lot of backlash as a whistleblower. He has had to retract certain things, but a lot of it to me just seems like nuance more than anything. So we're going to talk about that. But it's very interesting how in every single industry, there are these truth teller whistleblowers that get gaslit and essentially castrated for speaking truth. And that sounds like what this is all about to me. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, so we're in a situation where there's a lot of misinformation that goes out about the virus and how potent it is, what the vaccine is going to be like, and obviously we have a very major scandal that's just underway here in Florida, where I guess what you would call like a whistleblower in our own backyard, name is Rebecca Jones. Had the data that was coming out about COVID and how many people were affected, and Governor Desantis, who is obviously no stranger to controversy and scandal, decided to raid this woman's home and remove her laptop that had data storage.
That's what you gathered from that?
Oh, well, it's probably a lot worse than
well,
what we even
I
know.
mean, it's just, yeah, you gathered that they took her stuff, and I gathered that they held guns at her children.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, it is Big Brother.
That's what I garnered from that.
Oh, it's 1984 come to life. That's what
scary.
It is.
So yes, that's what happens to people that say things that people don't want them to say. Speaking
truth to power. And the more we avoid trying to do this, the more we I forgot who it was I was listening to who brought this up. Actually, I think it was, I think it was Andrew Yang, who, by the way, if you haven't watched the podcast with Andrew Yang and Ryan Knight, excellent podcast. And they spend a couple of minutes lauding this lovely lady right here, talking about what a great candidate she is. And,
I haven't even seen this.
Yes. Well, now you know. And one of the things that they talked about, which I think also speaks a lot to the district that we would be trying to represent if Jen were to run again, is on the Democratic side, especially the Democratic establishment and especially the old Democratic establishment, they are very content with the way things are, and they are very trusting of the corporate state, of the way things are set up. Something
it serves
about
them.
It does serve them, but in many ways they're just. I guarantee you, if you took a poll when it comes to the viewership of a certain age who watches, let's say MSNBC and CNN, like how much do you trust the news you're getting from there? I guarantee you the number's probably astronomically high.
But they don't have an audience in that range, really. I mean, young people don't watch that stuff. No,
that's true. And that's why, no pun intended, but you call it generational change, because let's face it, this is a generational shift that's happening right now. I would like to know what the numbers are in terms of people who get their news from corporate media versus people who are getting their news through, let's say, a feed like this.
I mean, you're talking about most people that are young don't even watch. I don't think they watch those networks. Like, I don't even, it's not even a matter of corporate or non-corporate to them. I think their info is all off their phone.
Yes.
And I don't know, more
which is why,
but it could be crazy people.
Well, which is why when it comes to, let's say COVID, a lot of people don't necessarily know, who to go to and who to trust. But I can tell you that the gentleman we are about to bring on is somebody that we happen to think has as good a handle on what's going on right now as anybody. So we are going to welcome Dr. Feigl-Ding into our chat. Eric, how are you?
We have to change.
I'm good. Thank you so much.
There we go. It's a pleasure, my friend. How obviously, we know your time is precious and limited, so we're very appreciative that you took the time to join us today. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about your background and where you're at today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I'm an epidemiologist, and I was.
Which means what? Which means what?
Well, it's interesting because I used to have to explain. It's not skin. It's
right. It's not
epidemic.
Epidemiologist.
Yeah, it's not epidermy. No, it's epidemic scientist, basically, epidemiologist. And I've been at Harvard School of Public Health for about 16 years until I recently left. Now at the Federation of American Scientists, where I head up risk communication on COVID. And it's been a wild, wild year. And I guess in January, I was trying to warn the world and, got some flack about it in January, February, and March. But it's, I think this is why, we're here. And part of the reason this pandemic has been such a drama is that, science has been ignored and, but public health is policy, is politics. So public health is very much interwoven into the politics of, can we force lockdowns? Can we keep people in their homes legally? can we make people wear masks and get vaccinated and all that kind of stuff? So it's been quite an interesting year, as you can imagine.
I noticed, and I was just sort of having this epiphany lately about the concept of just whistleblowers in every industry and what that what the backlash is and what you deal with. And this whole, it's almost like, and if you go back now, and I was looking back at some of the criticisms that you had gotten over some tweets in the past year. And when you go back and look at them, whenever people attack someone that isn't based on the substance, it's because they don't have that. So it's like, when you look at that, some of them are just, well, stay in your lane. Why don't you stay in your lane? This isn't what you do. So stay in your, that's not addressing the substance of the matter. That's criticizing your credentials. So would you explain like the difference between your background in what you're doing versus what would be considered the correct lane, or what some of those people were claiming was the right lane?
Yeah. So I think the understanding is that, well, epidemiology is a big field. It spans anywhere from environmental pollution. It spans anywhere from social justice inequality of why do African Americans get diagnosed with breast cancer later, when why do they die at a higher rate, and similarly, it also deals with obviously infectious disease, which is the original classic epidemiology, but also deals with clinical trials, whether it's vaccine trials, drug safety, drug trials. Doctors actually are the clinicians who deliver the drugs, but the actual people who analyze the trials are actual epidemiologists. And so in certain ways, there are niche areas, right? Like obviously brain surgery is different from, delivering babies, because they're different parts of medicine, right? But there are certain unique areas in which we're originally trained. And so at, Harvard, the same doctor in epidemiology, we go through the same curriculum, and then only later in research we specialize. And I think that's kind of the thing. And obviously, I'm not an infectious disease modeler per se. My models that I run are not infectious disease related. But what the underlying misunderstanding is that I'm trying to translate into a lay language that people can understand. And the other saying is, if you whisper it, or a butterfly flaps its wings in the forest, but no one hears it, did it really happen? And I think the key thing is that people need to know when something happened and really act on it. Because I think in this year, we've learned that it's not just the virus that kills, it is misinformation, is lack of action, is lack of policy momentum around a certain issue, whether it's face masks, aerosol airborne warnings, obviously when do you really need to lock down, even though no one wants to lock down, and really calling it out, calling our political leaders out when many scientists are very shy, let's just say. So I think those are just as important in a pandemic as the original infectious disease. No, you got the R not wrong. Even though, we later think it actually is higher. And now the new virus strain is actually higher. I think those are kind of like small areas. And I grant maybe the R naught has changed over time. But I think the basic message that, something
just so
really bad is coming.
R naught is the degree of multiplication of the virus, right? Like that's essentially what it's measuring, how fast it multiplies. Right. And that was where there was a point of contention in something that you said, but really it was splitting hairs on something that is needed to have an alarm siren. So that's the thing. They weren't saying, oh, this isn't worthy of alerting people. Just you're not exactly perfect in your data.
Yeah. Well, I think, and also the data was early, it was preprint, peer review, but the paper didn't come out for weeks later. Right now, by the way, almost everything's a preprint. The latest, all these, technically some of the trials of these vaccines haven't even been peer reviewed either, nor the newest thing on the new mutation. It's, this virus is moving so fast. Information is just coming out, from a fire hose. And, if we had to be cautious And I think Dr. Mike Ryan of WHO is right. If we had to be cautious, tippy-toe our way, and mince our words around every corner, then we would have lost even the first wave of the pandemic. So
I think the real danger are the people that come and the backlash against you. And what that does on the other side is it creates all these conspiracy theorist people that just refuse to now believe anything. And it's just keeps this fighting going, you know. But you were talking a little bit about like the policy. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit. I heard you ran for Congress in 2018.
Yeah, it was 2018 was a dystopian year. Like, you know, actually that's when a lot of the resistance movement against Trump grew, right? As you recall, because after the 2016 loss, everyone had to regroup in 2017. And in certain ways, I had like a lesson that it's really, if you don't act, so science, you publish science and you hope that someone uses it in government to make people's lives better. We should ban this chemical. EPA, do what you're supposed to. You know, stop this poisoning of children by these dangerous chemicals. But that's completely been like out the wind. You might as well be peeing into the wind when it comes to the Trump administration.
Yeah.
When it comes to anything EPA, health and social justice, it is just completely ignore agnostic of science whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you know, it was. I was like, you know what? Why am I still doing research when clearly research under the Trump era just makes zero difference. And so I think the main weakness in science is that scientists are, you know, they're very shy. They don't want to be out there and fighting their just cause from a different avenue, because there's that lane. Our lane is to do the research and publish and not try to warn the public or try to change policy. And I was sick of that. And I said, you know what? Not in this Trump era, you know, we could.
How was it? How was that?
Well, it was very interesting because I ran in my childhood home district where I went to elementary, middle, and high school.
Which is where?
Which is near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Okay. And, you know, Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania is very different from Philly or Pittsburgh, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
it's really kind of very Appalachian.
No, they say that.
Yes.
They say that it's Pittsburgh to the west, Philly to the east, and you got Alabama right in the middle.
You know the saying. I didn't want to say it, but since you said it, yes, you hit the nail right on the head.
Listen, it's a beautiful part of the country, but it's very, you know, they like to act like they're living back in, you know, the 1700s.
It's
in
part
many
of
ways.
Appalachia. Yeah, it's right there. So how was that running in that climate?
I think in the climate there was a momentum for change, and there was an ungerrymandered district around Harrisburg. Harrisburg is the capital, so there's a much smaller pocket. It's not like a full blue congressional seat that Columbus, Ohio has, or many other major city has. But they had ungerrymandered the state Supreme Court, and so you know it was winnable, and there was quite a health justice movement, quite a movement for sunrise movements. I signed the Sunrise Pledge, and so, but in certain ways, people didn't wake up to health care as much as a lot of the other social justice issues. You know, it was also March for Our Lives era. It was right after that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think, you know, as a scientist, you know, people sometimes still ask then, you know, why is the scientist running? You know, why? Because most of the time it's either social justice advocates or some lawyer or businessman or some career politician. And, you know, upending the traditional ways is always a little bit different, especially since I also kind of look different in central Pennsylvania.
I was going to say, you don't look like a typical middle of Pennsylvania kind of guy.
Yeah, I know.
You're Amish hat.
Yeah, I was going to say you're not Dutch.
Pennsylvania Dutch. And I don't scarf potato chips like a lot of the wonderful potato chip companies in Central VA.
Is that a thing? Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, like Snyder's, Hanover.
Now I want to
Martin's.
go there. So that's it's snacks.
Oh yeah, like snack foods. Like it's like the snack food
It's awesome.
capital of the world.
I did not know this.
Yes.
Now I need to.
You should go to the pretzel and chip aisle and turn it around, and you'll see so many that says Hanover, Pennsylvania, something, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yes.
I never even put it together. And what's so interesting is, to me, when I think about the people that I want being in Congress, I want scientists, and I want teachers, and I want people that represent different walks of life, but also people, no, technically representatives don't need to be experts. You rely on experts, but I think that every expertise that's brought to the table is a win. Like, that's a good thing. Like, we should want those people to be more involved, not less involved. I think part of the problem is the people that are involved are morons, and what we need are the people that are not that. And unfortunately, politics breeds a certain type of person. If that's all you do and that's what you know what their problem is? They stay in that lane, and that lane is a lane to nowhere. So I would actually rather have a bunch of other people coming in and doing that. You're exactly the kind of person that should be running for Congress. Maybe not in central Pennsylvania.
You have really good insights there. And I do think it should be on people of all walks of life, because honestly, there's moms who should be more represented, and I think teachers is a really good one. Veterans should be more represented, especially on the Democratic side. And I think scientists, and I mean scientists from many different areas, not just
and especially
healthcare.
Now that we need environmental scientists. Like, this is the time where we need those people to be heard. And just like in your industry, there's no shortage of silencing the environmental experts either.
Oh yes. People once said to me early in the pandemic, it's like, "Dear epidemiologists, now you know how we feel. Sincerely, climate scientists."
But it's true. I mean, but it's true. If you're saying something that's going to cost somebody money, they're going to shut that down.
Yeah. And I think the people don't understand, the concept of freedom actually has been completely abused, right? Like, if you look at New Zealand right now. Yes, they had to follow the government guidelines, but you know what? They had the freedom to attend concerts, have mosh pits there, attend pool parties and huge stadium soccer games. That's freedom. That's freedom that we don't have right now. And in so many other countries that actually replicated this, and it's not just high income countries. There's also Vietnam that is not high income, not an island, but they had really good leadership around that. And if you just adhere to science, you could actually get your life back sooner. My best example is, what if there was a lion roaming around in your zoo? Oh, it's just one stray lion. Or velociraptors in Jurassic Park. Oh, just one velociraptor. No one's going to come back to Jurassic Park or the zoo if there's just one stray wild animal running around there. And that's the problem. Businesses are never going to fully recover until we stop this pandemic, and we stop for good and prevent these crazy mutations that pop up like this weekend.
Do you know what I think about, though, when I think about those other countries? And this is kind of much more like spiritual, but the thing about all those other countries is there's much more of a general care for the collective. Most other countries in the world, just in general, and this is not something that's a liberal or conservative, or it isn't, but because if you went to the UK and spoke to the most conservative person there, they still think that everybody's entitled to health care. So all of those countries, and I've seen that. And even after Parkland, when everyone's like, well, why can't we just all turn in our guns like New Zealand? And I'm like, yeah, see, these are countries that have a strong sense of collective. And we don't have that here. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I think this rugged individualism is good to some degree. And then it becomes this kind of like this caustic element where you invoke rugged individualism. And again, sometimes some toxic masculinity gets rolled up in there as well. And in this complete distrust of government. And, government, and sometimes our political system is a little bit worrisome, but I think it's to our detriment because, look, the government is supposed to work for us, right? And, we're also supposed to choose our politicians. Our politicians not supposed to choose us, hence gerrymandering is not really a good idea. But I think this collective trust of each other is just so key. And Medicare for all. If you actually ask, I think Medicare for all is we're just trying to expand Medicare, but the actual concept of Medicare, which is basically universal health care for elderly, is very, very popular, even among conservatives.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And if you phrase it as, should we have private police officers roaming and then you pay a fee for you or service as you go, or private firefighters? No, everyone loves firefighters and police officers and public schools that, we all help collectively fund. But it's just that we're used to them. And other things, people are just completely against any government intrusion in their life, especially, healthcare. And healthcare, Medicare for all can actually save more lives.
Yeah.
And deliver better care and cut out the middleman, and so that there's no price gouging. Like it is insane. Other countries, let's just take COVID tests, a topic of our times. Other countries, it's completely free. Here, it's free if you want to wait like 7 to 10 days at a drive-through testing that you sit in your car for like 3 hours while it meanders through a parking lot.
Yeah.
Or you can pay $100, $200. I had a friend who actually paid $400 for a COVID test, and it was just insane. We're basically highest bidder drives everything. And what about, hey, you know what? During the COVID era, actually, people are seeing the other way around. Maybe making sure that you stay healthy actually protects me and my kids.
Yeah.
People are waking up to that concept, especially during the pandemic. So I think we're going to have a radical change. And I think if we drive this message, protect your community to protect yourselves, is a winning message. And also my Democratic friends who sometimes I see a lot of schadenfreude comments whenever, say, a Republican legislature or some anti-maskers get sick, and they're just like, let them be, or something like that. I said, no, that's the wrong way, because if they get sick, they're going to be at your barbershop, they're going to be your teachers, they're going to be other people in your community who spreads it to you and your family. There is actually collective good in guaranteeing healthcare for all. And, even if it's not a pandemic, whether it's, air pollution thing, it benefits everyone. And whether it's someone's diabetes or cancer, the fact that someone dies of diabetes or cancer, it's actually bad because it actually hurts our entire community in terms of fabric of our community, the work productivity of our community. I think it's just so short-minded. And I think this short-minded bottom line angle is completely part of the, I think the most troublesome part of American society, that we don't see the long-term gain.
Yeah, and I think
the thing.
And in many ways it speaks to the overall failures of the current economic system, which is get as much as you can as quickly as you can and don't worry about what's coming tomorrow. And I think we've seen that for quite some time, but it's becoming unsustainable now at such a massive scale. The mismanagement of this pandemic, I mean, I don't even know where you begin. I mean, as you know, we're in the state with probably you can argue about how bad Cuomo's handled it in New York, Newsom's handled it in California, but Governor Desantis here in Florida has been the most indifferent person I have ever seen.
Well, he's mini Trump.
Eric, what I would ask you is this, because there's a lot that, again, as I always say, you probably get, especially with corporate media, CNN, MSNBC, you're getting about 5% of what's actually going on. A lot of people don't actually know what goes on behind the scenes. What do you think is DeSantis's motivation? Because we see him go to these public events and nobody's wearing masks. I mean, it's just so callous. And I, for the life of me, with as many people that have died, and I even said right when we started today, there were 2,000 new cases in Miami-Dade alone of COVID today. What do you, in your opinion, why are they doing it?
I think it's partly fealty to Trump, political fealty, where
that's what I
unfortunately it's so frustrating. But Desantis is also buddies with Scott Atlas. He actually invited Scott Atlas over many times. Did grand tours, gave Scott Atlas speaking advice. And for those who are not familiar, Scott Atlas is basically the pro-herd immunity pandemic advisor that is so controversial. I call him sociopathic on the Mehdi Hassan show because if you try to infect everyone, and we know from email records now that was the Trump administration plan, that to infect everyone. It's not just the 1% who die, or whether it's 0.6% or 1%. If you try to infect 300 million people, 330 million, that's a lot of people who die. But it's not just death; it's also chronic illnesses.
Yeah, there's lifetime problems.
Oh yeah. And I always remind people, the erectile dysfunction, the potential risk that's there.
I
was just going to say.
Okay, so let me jump in. People sorry, this happened. Stop it. So what I always say to people, you mentioned erectile dysfunction. I have to give a shout out to my husband, your friend and neighborhood urologist. And if and when people are having that problem from COVID, please remember, seek out uromedics down here, South Florida.
I would think that if men thought that their private parts are not going to work properly, that they would take this virus a lot more seriously.
I know.
They're really
I actually think it is. Actually, I think it is one of the most effective messaging area. Actually, it was actually that messaging plus cigarette taxes that led to smoking being out of popularity in the U.S.
That's really interesting. So let's play a hypothetical game. Let's say that when this all started back in January, if this had been handled properly, what would that look like in terms of what results could? Because look, I mean, a virus is a virus. Okay, there's going to be things that happen. But let's say this got handled. How would that have been handled, and where would we be because of that?
Well, I think we would have handled it in terms of much more aggressive lockdowns, faster testing, more aggressive contact tracing, and public health messaging that was much more clear, recognizing asymptomatic transmission, hence masks, recognizing airborne transmission, hence masks, invoking the Defense Production Act for all mass manufacturing. There's country that has free testing, instant testing for everyone, plus to give out everyone masks. Or the masks are just like $2 because they've mass produced them. And so there's so much that could have been done. And lockdowns are actually not preferred. If you had done everything else, you would not have even need to do.
That's what I said in the first place. If everybody just maintained social distance, used good judgment, and stayed away from big gatherings and wore masks, then we could have just sort of gone
and clear political messaging from the top. Again, a 5-alarm fire or 5-alarm warning is just so key. And that's actually why in January I was I was watching the data and coming out of China. It's pretty bad. My cousins were sending me lots of interesting messages, and I'm seeing the stuff that's happening on Chinese media and social media. And I see that most of the scientists were just whispering, I'm kind of sort of maybe worried. No, you need to raise this now, and no one was doing it.
Well, look what happens when you do.
Yeah.
But see, look what happens when you do, and not a lot of people are willing to risk that.
I know. In certain ways, I'm not in I don't practice research as a daily career anymore, and so that's why I was I don't have anything to lose in terms of my research credibility or my publication kind of things. But but one thing I do know really well is how to shout from the rooftops. But I'm just a lowly scientist.
Not anymore. Now you've got quite the little following.
Yeah, I suppose. But nothing in terms of if I was in charge of pandemic response. And, and we had really good pandemic playbooks, as completely thrown out and ignored. But had we followed exactly what New Zealand did, Taiwan did, Vietnam did, in Vietnam, they quarantined basically 53,000 people when there was one hospital outbreak, 53,000 people. And they paid for room and board of 27,000 of them for 2 weeks. And this is Vietnam. It's not a wealthy country.
Right. That's like, right. They probably
they went like, we
California.
are going to lock this thing down because you know what? It's for the collective good that actually we can defeat this. And look, Vietnam has almost no cases, zero deaths for hundreds of days now, because they just went all in on making sure that there was nothing coming out. And it's that kind of decisive leadership. New Zealand had it, Taiwan had it. You know, Taiwan also paid for your lodging. And I think this is really key, because in America, a lot of our workers are not salaried. They're on these, 1099s, hourly workers like waiters and waitresses. If you test positive, you're quarantined, which means you're out of income, and all of your friends and coworkers are also quarantined, right? Because of close contacts. So there's a huge disincentive. If you go get tested, it's actually bad for you financially and for everyone around you, and they'll hate you. And so there's a huge disincentive. I'm not gonna pick up the phone if a contact tracer. If I'm caught sick, I'm gonna keep coming to work and not telling anyone. This is what's happening. And in other countries, the pandemic response is not like a one-time check or like a 2-month PPP, which, by the way, it would mostly benefit top corporations. They paid companies and their workers 70-80% on their original wage revenue on the dollar.
I think in Japan they covered 100%.
In Japan, there were small businesses, they covered 100%.
Yeah,
and if you had done that, and people then will be willing to comply. You have to give them the willingness to comply, right?
Correct. Yep.
Then support them, and some places contact tracing. If you find someone that needs to be quarantined, feed them, house them in a special place away from their families. Which, let's be honest, most of us, we live with our families and we don't have another secondary place to live. We're not rich people have vacation homes, and basically you would infect the whole family. And they saw that in China originally, and they realized you have to quarantine them away from and buy them a hotel, or that's actually what Washington State did. They were the only state who originally did that. But if we only just invested, again, in this social collective good to feed people, house people, pay people a living wage, and pay people a pandemic universal basic income, we would absolutely not be here right now.
I mean, to me, I look back on this and I'm like, if we had done those things in January, we would have been done with this in a couple of months. We would have been done with this in and then yes, there could always be resurgences of things that have to get dealt with. But I mean, how many? Because really, this would have been done in a couple of months. What is the big deal?
I think at the end of the day, as you know, and this is also coming from somebody who has family who lives in other parts of the world that have universal health care, I think that there is this fear, especially because they know that the system as it stands right now is very precarious. It's kind of teetering, if you will, in many ways. And they know that if a working class of this country gets a taste of what a real social democracy is like, they are never going to give it up.
Yeah.
And they will fight tooth and nail to keep it. I always said from the beginning, you need Medicare for all and UBI. You need Medicare for all to make sure that this is universally covered top to bottom, whatever needs to be done. Just thinking about how many people did not get tested because of the fear of what the for-profit healthcare industry does in this country.
Well, they knew that they couldn't afford to do anything about it.
Correct.
Anyway.
And then on top of that, having a universal basic income where you can make that decision of, if I don't want to put myself in a high risk position of catching this virus, I can stay at home and not worry about getting kicked out of my home. And right now we're looking at potentially upwards of 20 million people that are on the cusp of being homeless on New Year's. So but it's very basic. And like I said, I think a lot of that rugged individualism in central Pennsylvania, and you find it all throughout the United States, again, and that's why I don't think anybody really understood the Trump phenomenon in many ways. It's not about whether he was right or wrong. It's about they feel like no one in Washington gives a damn about them.
Because they don't.
Right. And that was his 2016 coalition before many of them became his Trump cult. People saw him as a beacon of hope who, again, their saying was drain the swamp. You still see those signs everywhere where I grew up. And I think the drain the swamp there is a lot of swamp, and there is a lot of corporate interests on both sides, and we know that exists. And I think if only we actually fought for the everyday people and people could see that, we would actually win. I think the progressive movement, if you actually went all out and delivered one of the key progressive agendas and people realized how popular it is, I think it would just keep going, right? We need to break through this wall of we need to either deliver the universal basic income or Medicare for all in an affordable way, not the some of the more controversial ways. But if we actually just made it and people tasted that freedom of healthcare for all. And I actually try to think the best way to sell Medicare for all is not that, oh, look, elderly, I love it. Don't you want it too? I think the best way is, look, you have, and to especially the conservatives, you have the freedom to quit your job if you have an abusive boss, sexist boss, harassing boss. You can have the freedom to start your own business without worrying, how am I going to pay for my child's cancer therapy if I change a job that, you know, it's like a startup, or do my own thing that doesn't have that kind of, you know, guaranteed workplace healthcare benefits, which aren't even that great. But you could have the freedom to start your business. You have freedom to leave your job for a better job. And I think that would actually be huge and booming to those, not just everyday Americans, but also convincing the people on the right that this is actually in their interests. Just like, oh, maybe protecting a community from COVID is actually protecting me too. You know, exactly.
I mean, I always say that how is people being healthy, and I also say educated, not in the best interest of everybody around them, right? Like, that's in everybody's best interest for people to be healthy in general. Speaking of which, I see that my mom is watching this, and my mom has been basically stuck at home with my dad for months and months and months now, because my dad is a vulnerable population. And so my mom wants to know if you're getting the vaccine.
Oh, absolutely. I think the vaccine is just like, the vaccine is a no-brainer, because vaccine, again, it's a 95% effective vaccine and 100% against any severe disease.
People are concerned about how quick this came about. Like, there's definitely, and I am not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I don't get a flu shot every year. Like, there's just certain things that are not worth the trade-off for me. And this came together, what seems, I mean, can you talk a little bit about the science of the vaccine and like why you trust that?
So first of all, there's many kinds of vaccine, and some of the older, you know, there are some ancient horror stories, and those were like the live vaccines. And the live vaccines are much riskier, but this is neither a live vaccine nor of the virus, nor is it the actually intact virus. This is a snippet. The mRNA is a snippet. The mRNA is like the working blueprint. Your DNA is your archival blueprint of your body. The mRNA is like a shortened, you know, you photocopy out from the library archives a working copy of the recipe of a protein. And the protein it makes is the spike protein. Spike protein is a protein that juts out of the virus that grabs onto human receptors, ACE2 receptors. And the spike, and so, if it grabs successfully, then the whole virus goes in to this human cell. And so it's this little cloth, and it's not an actual claw, but it's this spike that sticks out that we're being trained on. So the mRNA teaches your body to make this protein, while other vaccines, like the Oxford one, hitches this protein on another very inert, harmless virus. But it's the basis of it is that a vaccine is a training program for your body, right? And it trains you to recognize. It's like your first day of school in kindergarten. Hi, this is your teacher, Mrs. Larson. She'll take care of you. Listen to everything you say. She's nice. But, you know, if it's not Mrs. Larson, the stranger, be careful. Be careful of this bad guy. And so the virus teaches you, what is it, how to recognize this, so that next time when you see it, you basically will be able to develop immunity much faster, and then you'll be able to mobilize them immediately against the virus. And the reason mRNA is actually pretty good and pretty safe is mRNA just goes away and gets destroyed.
Uh-oh.
Frozen again?
He got froze.
Hopefully that's it. Hit the mouse. That'll unfreeze
It might
him.
make it happen if I just do that. Okay, so
but until he comes back, the question that I was going to ask him, and he was very thorough in explaining why Medicare for all makes a lot of sense. But
you're just feeding.
Wait.
Oh, you guys. Sorry.
You're back. No, that's okay. We filled in. We gave all the technical.
We did it. Dead air. We tried to avoid that at all costs. So there you go.
Just said. I said blah 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 blah.
Yeah. So I think the mRNA is pretty safe because it disappears quickly. Yes, there's some conspiracy theories that can enter your genome. It's almost impossible. Okay. And
so this is, but then why don't we have more vaccines for more things if we can do it like that?
Well, we are developing them. mRNA is a relatively, it wasn't developed this year. It was developed like 5 years ago. It's just vaccines cost a lot of money. These trials cost a crap ton of money to do. But that said, the actual synthesis of the vaccine is pretty fast. Like we had this vaccine, Moderna had this vaccine in February. Like the DNA, the RNA sequence came out in January. We already had this vaccine synthesized in February because it's very easy to do. Oh, how is the virus built? Here's the spike protein. Copy, paste, put into a vaccine. Make this subprotein of the virus, and then this subprotein will get presented to the cell. It's very easy in that sense. In certain ways, if there's a mutation, Moderna, Pfizer, they can easily make the brand new mutation. They can easily make a new one, a new vaccine for this new virus strain very quickly. The hard part is the testing. It costs like literally hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to do these, 30, 40,000 person trials, right?
Yeah.
And so if you had the funding, you could easily do it. And this year we have the funding because of, global motivation. We have funding from WHO, we have funding from Germany. Every country is just basically dumping money on this to stop it. But that's the hard part. And that's actually, in certain ways, the fast vaccine is a global success. In the old days, polio, smallpox, they took over a decade to develop.
Right.
I actually have the smallpox vaccine because I was.
You have one because I think you're younger than me.
I know. I was born in 1983, but I was born
you're
in
way
China.
Younger than me.
I'm 83 as well, my friend.
Oh, there we go. But I have it because I was born. But it's the scar. Most people today don't have that scar anymore. But those who have the scar, they remember how bad. Like literally, smallpox killed 500 million people at least in the last 100 years. 500 million people, 500 million people. That's people died, and not just maimed or anything. Died. People remember the old. In polio, there's polio people restricted to wheelchairs. Our FDR couldn't walk because of polio. So many kids and adults today couldn't walk because of that, and had all their muscles cut out or removed, and it's terrible. It was like, but people have forgotten that, and that's I think the biggest lesson. People don't. No one remembers the 1918 pandemic because it's over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so many other people don't understand and can't imagine what they've never seen before. I could have shouted, "The aliens are here" in January, and I don't know. I could have actually had less of a pushback, in January, because people just can't imagine what they've never seen before. And the pandemic of this scale is astronomical, and that's why I'm like, you know what?
Here, check this out.
You know what? Let's just do it.
Check this out.
So
Nope, don't go. So this is a comment that we just get.
We want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. We know that there are people who are very afraid of, injecting anything into their bodies. So I don't know, and I'm not even going to begin to pronounce fluoroquinolone. Yeah.
So mRNA technologies, I'm not quite sure what this is about.
I don't either. Well, look, people you have a big following. You get all sorts
and there's always going to be a percentage of society that is going to say, you know what, even if they're dying, they're like, no, I'm not taking this. I'm just not.
Well,
and that's
and who?
I would say to these deniers, well, if you don't want to take the mRNA vaccine, take one of the other vaccines. In China, they have the inactivated dead virus vaccine. Yeah. There's Norovax that is not mRNA. It's directly giving the protein, it's a protein.
What are we doing here? Is
and then
the one that Pfizer released is
the Pfizer and Moderna are both mRNAs. The Oxford one it takes an inert virus as a hitchhiker, and it sticks it on the back of it, kind of like wearing a backpack.
Right.
So, and that one has no mRNA, and that one is also pretty safe. And all the inactivated vaccines are also safe. And the Norovax one is just a simple protein. You have proteins in your body all the time. You have millions of proteins in your body. If you're really that doubtful of mRNA, which you shouldn't be, because mRNA by the technology allows you to make and solve potentially many other diseases too. But if you're against that, just take one of the other ones. Honestly, just take one of the other ones, because there will be out in literally, I think, January, February, March. These other ones are going to come out too.
So we're going to have a choice. We're going to have
so much choice.
Options for COVID.
You're not going to. There's the conspiracy theorists are going to run out of ideas, honestly, around this. Yeah. Because there are, and I want to tell you, there are so much misinformation, disinformation out there. When it came to herd immunity. So there's the Scott Atlas pro-herd movement, and then there's the scientists, right? But most scientists are pretty quiet. They're not tweeting at the top. So someone analyzed Twitter. Half of all the pro-herd were from bots. We actually analyzed this FAS. And we know that there's all this misinformation out there. And there's anti-mask misinformation bots out there. And the anti-maskers, as we say, are the future anti-vaxxers, because they're also bought into the anti-vaxxer movement.
But I do know legitimate anti-vaxxers, that are not bots. I know
that. That's a good point. And I think there's two different kinds of anti-vaxxers. There's left-wing anti-vaxxer and right-wing anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
There's among the MAGA crowd, there's a different crew. Well, among the liberal crowd, there's those who, this autism thing still keeps floating around. That study was debunked. It was considered fraudulent. The doctor who published it was disbarred, or his license removed. From UK, and they almost never do that in the UK. And the whole paper was retracted, but it's out there and it floats around. And honestly, people, here's the other biggest thing I'm worried about. When we vaccinate 10 million people, 100 million people over the next few months, guess what? Out of this 10 million people, there's going to be people who naturally die. We're already vaccinated to 250,000 right now, almost. And we actually estimated in 2 months, if you vaccinate 10 million, in 2 months, there will be 14,000 natural deaths. There'll be 6,000 heart attacks, 6,000 strokes, and about 10,000 cancers. But I could see how you find one anecdote of my daddy got a vaccine and he died a week or 2 weeks later. That's going to happen.
Of course.
These stories, there is a natural background rate of death. So, this is why actually in total COVID mortality are actually the excess deaths is what is needed. And the excess deaths for COVID this year is just out of this world. We're talking about 350,000 already in terms of excess deaths. And there's huge numbers among young people as well, 12,000 at least among young people. Look, I think people are going to be... We live in a social media age where information, good or bad, can have huge reach. And this is what allows Pizzagate. This is what allows tons of, election fraud conspiracies and tons of other conspiracies to flow out there, because it's just the nature. Right now, so many Republicans also still think that Barack Obama was not Christian. That still is a thing.
See, and I just don't think he was actually a Democrat.
But there's so much misinformation, disinformation, And I can't even start in terms of some of the
which I think in a lot of ways it brings it full circle, Eric, to the extent of why we really do need Medicare for all, because I mean, the way that we sell it and have been selling it is quite simply the removal of the for-profit middleman that has no reason to exist in the system. And so when it comes to things like vaccines, a lot of people just see it as, oh, well, they're just trying to, make a big profit. They're not actually concerned about fixing the problem. Well, if you eliminate that for-profit component that has no reason to exist, I don't believe in, I think most people would agree to the standard Medicare for all system where you're eliminating the for-profit middleman, but you are allowing the market to still dictate that if a doctor is really good at his job, he or she can make whatever they want. Whereas a socialized medicine system where the rates of income get capped, I think most people would not go for that. But the idea of not having to have private insurance unless it's supplemental, your choice, or the idea that we are not allowed to negotiate our prescription drug prices like Canada is 10% of what it costs.
Yeah.
Just things like that. I think
it causes me to think that yes, when something has a profit motive, it makes it highly suspect.
Yeah.
And that includes things like vaccines. It's sort of
exactly.
like
Part of the vaccine movement is because of this for-profit big pharma price gouging. They see people price gouging on insulin and EpiPens, and that actually hurts their credibility with vaccines. And that's, in certain ways, that's really unfortunate. Now, granted, the vaccines right now are given out for free, but I think long term, I think they really have to reform the pricing. It is just insane. And to say that Canada has dangerous drugs, come on.
When Cory
Booker
did that, and I'm from New Jersey, and I'm like, you know what, man? And Cory, as you know, is a very nice guy, but
Cory, big pharma. Booker.
Yeah, it's like, you know what, man? You're really showing your stripes, dude. I understand. Everyone thinks there's no such thing as a correlation between who you take your money from and how you vote. I'm like, oh, you think that? Well, I can prove to you that it does matter. So it's unfortunate, but I do think it's becoming a lot more in the consciousness of Americans right now. So there's a very hot button topic on the left right now, as you know, about whether or not, because the majority in the House is very slim for Pelosi, whether or not it actually does make sense from a strategic standpoint, at least to bring it more towards, let's say the CNN and MSNBC crowd, to actually go forward with a Medicare for all floor vote where it actually would be a mainstream talking point, and having people actually go to the floor and debate whether or not it makes sense to have a universal healthcare system. Do you believe at this point in time that it would make sense to push for that vote?
I think we should definitely push for Medicare for all. And I think we have to actually make the other side see that it's beneficial, using what we discussed before, that, freedom to, start a new job, start a new business, argue to those freedom advocates, but also to see that, we can actually expand the tent. They fear that, by pushing a progressive value like Medicare for all, that it will scare off, where they're going to lose their middle seats. I think the key, messaging is that actually expands the Democratic tent to those who have been underserved, who think DC is a swamp. The people who joined the Trump right, and in certain ways, the extreme right and the extreme left. I think it's not a spectrum like this. I think it's a circle. They curve around to each other. And that's why there were some people who hop ship between, some libertarians and also some Bernie people who, actually cross-voted in 2016 for Trump. Because I think that the draining the swamp movement, if you could really convey that, is actually a much more powerful movement than this hold the center kind of thing. And I think the Democrats, the hold the center approach is not working because the other side does not want to negotiate. What you have to do is steal the other side's bases, hearts, and minds.
Yep.
And I think the best way to do that is with Medicare for all, and see it as, look, we gave Social Security, unemployment, Medicare in the 60s, and everyone loves them, right? Your grandma, Democrat or Republican, loves their Social Security, loves their Medicare. Don't you dare touch your Medicare. And people love them because they're actually good for a society. And don't you want that for your children's, in case your children get sick and cancer, so that no one should have to choose between putting food on the table and their insulin or EpiPen, right? No one should have to choose between seeing a doctor and feeding themselves. And right now, people are making a lot of these harsh choices, whether it's eviction, food, medicine. And if we just had part of that entirely equation covered, we could actually expand our tent. And I think expand our tent is a really good message that if we can convince leadership to do it, it would actually make the Democratic Party so much stronger.
Yeah, their problem is they expand the tent to the right and they don't expand it to the left. And, what we really need is a Labor Party, and which is what the Democrats used to sort of be, or were, and, that was sort of the concept of that, but they're not a Labor Party. And so what we're seeing is this populist uprising on both the left and the right, which is the working class. And the biggest fear amongst the people in charge is that those people will find their way together and realize that it's really us against them. And so they're going to just keep finding things to keep us all fighting amongst ourselves. And the Republican and Democrat facade is that's their best weapon in this country. It keeps everybody fighting for their team. And it's so pointless.
Jen went on a very popular podcast recently, Tim Pool, and he definitely has more of a right-leaning group. But I got to tell you, when it came to the bread and butter issues, especially Medicare for all, almost everybody was on board. This is really not that complicated. It's the problem is, and this is the thing that I could never. One of the worst things about Hillary and a lot of other people at the highest ends of politics is they pit voters against one another. It's the people in charge that are the ones that are really taking advantage. It's like Trump took such advantage of desperate people who were just looking for someone to actually care about them and enact policies that were really in their best interest. And the only thing Trump gave a damn about was how much more money can I siphon away from people and using, I mean, like right now you're seeing what's going on with Jared Kushner and the things that he was doing. I mean, that guy's I try to tell everybody, you do realize Jared Kushner's father is a federal crook who spent years in federal prison. It's
None
not.
of these people ever accountable.
They never care. And I think you raised an earlier point. They just want someone to care about them. And reminds me, my favorite movie was The American President.
I love that movie.
Right? And the best scene was Michael J. Fox and Michael Douglas. And, it was one of them talking about the polls rating. And Michael J. Douglas was like, no, people are so thirsty. They're so thirsty that they would crawl in the desert to a mirage. And when they discover it's not there, they'll drink the sand. To which Michael Douglas replies, no, they don't drink the sand because they're thirsty. They drink the sand because they don't know the difference.
Yeah.
And I think the difference and showing people the true difference is so darn critical. And having the leadership, the leaders to show them that is, again, like your title of your podcast, it needs a generational shift.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're a movement. I mean,
that's a great segue.
It's a great segue. So, well, no, I mean, would you consider running again? Because this is what we need.
And what is generational change to you? What does that mean to you?
I think generational change, it's kind of like, it's a mosh pit of many things in which, we've had enough, right? We've had enough of climate change, either denialism or pussyfooting around climate change, right? Or we need generational change in terms of, gun advocacy, anti-gun advocacy. We need generational change around big pharma and see what they truly are. Because also, I want to remind you, big pharma did not invent the vaccine. It was actually the scientists who did. And, Dr. Kariko actually invented the mRNA, and she's a Hungarian immigrant. And
now I feel better about that.
No, she actually labored for 40 years. She's going to win the Nobel Prize next year. And, she also lost her job many times, almost because no one believed in her science initially. But I think the generational change of all these different social justice issues, and I think we need to frame social justice as not just African-American social justice. I think it's social justice for the poor and social justice of how all these people evicted are left and right are going to, in certain ways, this eviction, I don't know how to stop it unless CDC extends this eviction moratorium, maybe after January 20th. but it could actually make people rise up on both the left and the right, that there's this incredible amount of injustice, right?
Right.
And maybe they'll coalesce around a new coalition, coalesce around ways to fight poverty. And I think the anti-poverty movement is not a political thing. I think anti-poverty is something, people are hungry, being evicted, getting sick, left and right. It's completely agnostic. It's just like a virus. It infects everyone on both sides. And if we just leverage that into say, enough is enough, we need health justice movements. And I think this could be the winning issue of our times. And I think the pandemic has only exposed everything out front.
Yes. Exactly.
So I think in the next few years we'll see radical change in the whatever comes out after this pandemic.
Well, if you ever run again, we'll support you.
Thank you so much. I'll let you know the first moment I decide.
I can't.
Well,
look, I don't know why anybody would.
Yeah,
want
everybody.
To do this.
Well, everybody wants her to run against Wasserman Schultz again. So it's
yeah.
And Medicare for all is one of those defining issues between the two of them because Debbie would she's very much entrenched with private insurance and big pharma, so it is what it is. But I do think you're right. It's absolutely true that it's it's not one thing, it's several things, and that's why they fight. The establishment right now fights so hard to stop any type of momentum because they know that if just one thing breaks through,
it's done.
It's done because it'll become an avalanche. It'll be everything.
I hope so.
That's why we're so grateful for what Bernie started and a lot of other people that have come along like yourself. Andrew Yang was and is a huge supporter of Jen. There's a lot of people within the movement that
have come up over the past couple of years that have been making interesting points that have not been typical, that are bringing something new to the party. And I don't mean the political party.
And I also have to say, Eric, the thing that we've been talking about a lot recently, especially in left politics, you come off in such a warm and non-confrontational way. But more than anything else, you check your ego at the door, and so few people have that capability. A lot of people want the attention, they want the adulation, and I understand how that really turns people off. But if we stick strictly to the issues and we have this coalition that is, as Reverend Jackson used to say, the Rainbow Coalition, that it's all different walks of life and all different.
We're all being equally screwed.
Yeah, we really are, and we're getting to that point now where I think a lot of people are starting to get it. And as long as you keep speaking truth to power yourself, and we'll do what we can with GenCore and generational change. It's inevitable that positive change is coming.
And you're so not like geeky and nerdy and science. I was doing a little reading, and it said something like, "Did you used to get made fun of when you were a little kid?"
Yeah, a little. In Central
I can't see it. I just can't see it. You're just
No, I was kind of like awkward. I think I had a coming out, awakening in my 20s, I think. But I was really geeky and nerdy, at some point in my life. And
I think
also,
where you are.
Yeah, I had to. And in certain ways, and grew up in Central Pennsylvania, where you're surrounded by conservatives, you see them as real people, right? Because they're your neighbors, and you see how people suffer in Middle America outside of certain bubbles that we live in, and being made fun of obviously builds a little spine and thicker skin.
Yeah.
But I think growing up where I grew up, it was because my mom was a professor there. But growing up where I grew up, I think it actually lets us see the actual suffering on both sides of the political spectrum. And if you can empathize with the other side and understand what makes them tick, right? Beyond just the certain cult members and extreme members, if you actually see what they tick, it is all the same things. We are all the same. We don't want to be evicted. We want good schools for our kids. We want not to be hungry. We want to succeed. We want to be healthy. And this is like the fundamental baseline of this Maslow's this pyramid, right? And I think this fundamental desire for all these things is what will unite us in the end. So I'm really hopeful for you. guys. And I think thank you so much for your movement. And I think it will grow. It will grow. I think people are waking up to this movement. I think it's an avalanche you can't stop. Right. I think in certain ways that Andrew Yang pulls in so many people from the other side as well is also proof of this movement. And I think basic income is something people didn't appreciate before. Now they very much appreciate during the pandemic. Right?
Well, you can see that and that our healthcare should not be tied to employment, because that's ridiculous. Absolutely. And nobody else
we
does
have
that.
to. We just have to keep having these. We have to keep having.
And we can't have 50% of our. We can't have all these bankruptcies, especially 50% of all bankruptcies are medical bankruptcies.
Are healthcare related?
Yeah,
it's amazing. And so, like I said,
it's 0% in any developed
nobody
world.
has that. I know. If you went to another country and said that you had to go bankrupt because of health, they look at you like that's unheard of.
And the last thing I would mention is this, and I always maintained that the actions, the boorish, over the top actions of Trump was always distraction from what was the real issues with him. This anti-science, this anti-environment. It was. I mean,
that's the real
that is the thing. Yeah. Like, to me, that was always.
I actually think that he does it. He tweets something crazy, like it's completely not even political, just completely crazy, attacking someone. Whenever he has bad policy dump out the next day. And I've seen this. Every time EPA announces something really, really bad, it's usually on the heels of him tweeting something crazy the day before or the morning of. And I actually think it's a good head fake, right?
Yeah. And and not only that, and this has always been, and you're obviously, again, from central Pennsylvania, the idea that there are people in the media who do not at the top of their lungs say that fracking is bad. It actually not only pollutes the air, contaminates your drinking water, and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, there really has been like this active anti-science, anti-environment movement, and it's what has allowed these multinational corporations to get away with just the whole pillaging of the environment. And central Pennsylvania is a place that has suffered as mightily as any place. So when they come in there and say, oh, we're going to protect coal, we're going to protect fracking, I'm like, how about putting $1 trillion infrastructure bill through that focuses on clean energy jobs, and you're going to train these individuals on how to do it? There's plenty of sunlight, plenty of farming, lots of things you can do in central Pennsylvania.
Light rail.
Yeah. How about light rail?
I actually think light rail. So in certain ways, I think either high-speed rail and also this change to remote working will actually really increase home values and the ability of people in rural Pennsylvania to actually have a livelihood without moving to a city. Right? Because in certain ways, being tied to a city has actually been kind of really frustrating for a lot of people that they can't afford to move there. Yeah. And I think, but all the good jobs are there. But what if all the good jobs are hyper commutable from like 100 miles away, or they can be teleworked? Actually, that expands the base. And I think in certain ways, if you want to win a stronger Democratic coalition by expanding the base just from outside the urban areas into the not just suburbs, which we've won decisively in 2018, but into the more like developing, like, again, the Harrisburg-ish, purplish areas. Yeah. You could actually win a much larger coalition. And in certain ways, I think the other way to win the progressive movement is to expand the Democratic base large enough that the progressive movement could actually kind of help take it over without being fear of, oh, we're so on the edge. If we lean left a little bit, we're gonna lose all these other middle seats, right? Yeah. If we and again, I think it should be focused on these basic fundamental things that are not like toxic, controversial to the other side.
We stick to policy. It's what I say: policy, not party. And when you do that, it's amazing how you'll get people on your team.
Do not underestimate. And, as you said, you did go on with Mehdi Hasan. He's one of him and Ali Veshi are probably the two guys that, that we would say that we respect that's on corporate media on the MSNBC side. But overall, do not underestimate the power of corporate media and what they can do to influence the voices. That's why I think having that Medicare for All floor vote is key, because a lot of those people that watch, especially the older generation, they're not as well versed as what we discuss on independent media, for example, or
No.
individuals like yourself. They need to know this. And the more we find reasons to come together, the more effective I think it's going to be coming forward. And we have to advance and give a larger platform to individuals like yourself who are scientists, who are the ones who will advance society. Like I said, the scariest thing about what's happened, since, sort of the Reagan Revolution, if you will, and we've been dealing with it for 40 years, is this, like I say, people talk about the Democratic Party and obviously it's been co-opted by Wall Street. Well, you know what? The Republican Party has been co-opted by the evangelical right and this, backwards thinking, anti-science. It's so detrimental, to where we are. But like I said, we were extremely grateful that you wanted to come on, and there'll definitely be a lot of views for this, and we would love to continue this conversation going forward.
You could be our new science expert. I love that, because I have a lot of people that are those people that we talk about that we're transitioning from the center a little bit more to the left. And I feel like we do it sort of holding their hands and saying, okay, it's not so scary. And we need to present information at a place at which they understand and speak a language that they understand. It's important.
And shout it at the right volume that people try to hear.
Yes.
and
you know what? Unfortunately, the way the way you say it, it's really unfortunate because, I loved Bernie, but I also recognized his flaws as a candidate. And, there is something to be said for, again, bringing it back full circle. Andrew Yang, in many ways, is that he's the perfect representation of the way you need to pitch major policy
changes
to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bernie came off in a way that, unfortunately, we as wonks, you, me, Jen, and a lot of people in between, we just pay attention to the policy. We're not concerned about the presentation. But for tens of millions of people in this country, presentation matters. It just does. Yeah. That's why Obama is one of the greatest politicians I've ever seen, because he had a way of articulating his points that made people feel good.
He's articulating.
He is. Yeah. And so Andrew, also has that ability. And I think we need to amplify those voices more so going forward. And I think Jen's done a wonderful job of that. But, we're in South Florida, and, South Florida really takes a long time to get it to stick to people. But it's going to happen. And
people like you coming on is very helpful.
1,000%, Eric. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to support you guys. And that we were on the same page in terms of where we need to go as a society. And I think we need more coalition builders like this, and Jen, I'm looking forward to you running.
I don't know. I'm not deciding yet.
Let's give it.
It's harsh.
She just wants to make sure if she's going to do it, because I mean, listen. The reality is, because of the way this district is set up,
it's harsh.
Because of the fact that you need to have the money to do TV advertising and mail advertising, we have to be able to compete against Debbie's war chest. We were not able to do that the first time.
It's harsh.
But the fact that we were able to get almost 30% of the vote with everything working against us, including the pandemic and the money and all that.
Not so bad.
Yeah, it's not as it actually it was a very good campaign in many ways. But that is a decision that'll be made next summer. Once over the next 8 to 10 months, it's all about building this coalition that we can do not just here in Florida, but throughout the United States.
Well, and also getting Nina Turner elected. That's
yes, well, we definitely want to get we definitely want to get Nina elected into Congress. That's a big part of it. And we are starting something here. But again, like I said, if we check our egos at the door, and you are a perfect example of that, who is just very warm and very on point and really can articulate those points that we need to maybe the people that are not as sure or comfortable yet, but we would love to have you on again.
Sure.
Let's definitely keep the conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Meantime, we just need to survive this damn pandemic. And we need people to not be evicted, not go hungry, and be willing to take the vaccine, because if we can show them that science leads the way, and we can show them social justice issues actually are the most fundamental issues to our survival, I think that's a winning message for all progressive messages in the coming years. So
I agree.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have to extend the olive branch. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yes.
Bye.
Take it easy. Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Bye-bye. That was that may be our best yet.
I don't know. He's just cute, though. I just liked him.
Great guy. And so, this
God,
whole.
I feel old. That's what I garnered from that conversation.
Jesus Christ. I mean, listen, you're not
really
even,
old.
listen, when you hit your next birthday, then you're really going to be,
I don't think I'm going to let you sit here next to me.
Yeah, you're not even going to allow it. Yeah. Jen's got a big one coming up in May.
Not.
Yeah.
Don't make a big production out of nothing.
No, but I know how you're going to react to it.
You don't know anything. You know nothing.
Oz, Obama is one of our worst presidents, unfortunately, but he was a great politician.
That's all he meant. Yeah,
There's
I think,
huge difference.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about accomplishments. Unfortunately, he's sandwiched between two complete buffoons. And so it's like he'll come off looking better just based on who he's surrounded by.
And again, the reason why we hammer Obama as much as any president is because he had the opportunity.
He did.
He was so good at cultivating, a multitude of different networks. Remember when he won the first time in 2008, not only did he have a super majority, but a filibuster-proof Senate. I mean, he won.
We didn't even get a public option.
Obama, I think, won 30 states as a Democrat, which is amazing. I mean, he really,
he took two wars to 7.
But the truth is, for those of you who want to know, why? Yeah. So why is it that Obama, turned out to be, such a major letdown, if not an outright failure as a president, is because he wanted to be a rich man, and that's it. And
the thing is, and this is on me, because I think that I was at that point, and I think a lot of people felt the same way, very hungry for something like that, and very excited at the prospect of what appeared to be progressive thought and progress. That's what it, and I think that was the mistake I made, is that I looked at someone like Barack Obama and I assumed that he was progressive just based on how he looked. So shame on me for making that assumption that, this is our first Black president. Of course, he's going to be moving the progressive needle. For
those of you who do not listen to Dr. Cornel West, I highly recommend it, because that gentleman has put it as crystal clear as any way possible as to why there wasn't more blowback against Obama and the things.
You know what? And look, you could talk about the race issue in every direction and where it played out there, but the bottom line is that he was just a moderate Republican that was just towing the line and furthering our complete corporate takeover.
And let's be honest, a lot of people
drilling in the Arctic.
So when people talk about, Obama earned this, Obama earned that, Obama did not earn a $15 million mansion on Martha's Vineyard. The way he was able to afford that was by giving $400,000 a pop Wall Street speeches. You know how you get Wall Street speeches? By not prosecuting any of the Wall Street executives that literally tanked our economy a decade ago. And the same thing's going to happen again. It's going to happen very soon.
Well, he didn't prosecute them because he's the one who first bailed them out in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, it's just, you know what though? And I do feel like what's racist about my thoughts on it is that I actually had higher expectations for him because he was Black, and that's on me. And my level of disappointment is higher for him because I feel like he was in a position to speak on behalf of an entire vulnerable population and really make a change.
Correct.
And instead of doing so, and again, this is on me for my expectations. He was just a moderate Republican doing whatever he was
and of course
do.
he's gotten a lot of brushback, I would say, as much as anything, for Flint. Flint is definitely something, especially because he went there and he did that publicity stunt where he drank the water and made it seem like everything's okay. I haven't seen Michael Moore's latest film, Fahrenheit 11/9, but that movie in many ways really crystallized, the way Obama was just so indifferent to the problems that really were going on, especially in the Black community, and just neglected it. And he's just, like I said, great politician, but he was not a good president. And unfortunately,
and it's sad. And I actually think that he's decent people. Like, I don't think he's a bad, malicious, evil. I don't think of Barack Obama the way I think of the Clintons, the way I think
Bushes.
Of Hillary. No. But I just, I feel like,
a letdown. Massive letdown. That's the best way to describe it.
Whereas with Trump, I was full on expecting a train wreck. So there's nothing remotely disappointing about him.
Yeah.
He actually lived exactly up to the expectations that I had for him.
And the truth is, Trump was skating along and was having the type of presidency you would expect up until COVID, because that's when the exposure of the anti-science, anti-environmental, anti-health movement blew up in everybody's faces. And I'm sure Scott Atlas is one of multiple people in his inner circle that were like, yeah, it doesn't matter. If people die, they die. But we're not shutting down the economy. We are not giving people health care. And we are certainly not giving them a universal basic income.
I would have just appreciated the heads up on that. I don't even mind that. I really don't. Sort of like when he said he was in Syria for the oil. All right, well, at least you're owning it.
Would have basically just come out and say, hey, everybody for themselves.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yes. We're not going to do anything about it. We care more about the economy. Herd immunity is what we're banking on. Go forth and prosper.
And you're seeing it right now. Biden's about to walk into the White House and they're passing a $600 one-time stimulus check. I don't know how much longer you think people are going to put up with this. I really don't. People are beyond desperate at this point.
Oh, I know. It's going to start to get...
Look,
when people are... we joke because people are putting up these mock guillotines in front of billionaire houses.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of symbolic, but not necessarily.
I have to tell you,
I mean, it's like this is getting to that place.
And I have been paying attention very closely to what Wasserman Schultz has been doing, or in this case, not doing. The idea that you have a congressional representative in one of the most hotbed spots in the country for this virus and the deaths that have followed. We've lost friends. I've known several people that have died because of COVID.
Yeah.
And the idea that she doesn't even attempt to be a leader in this moment is all the more reason why people like her have to go. Because if you're not leading in this moment, think about Dr. Feigl-Ding. Got to get it right. That's a leader. That's a person who actually is looking out for the best interests of the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
The people that we have in power, it's very easy to get distracted in the state of Florida by not paying attention to how bad somebody like Wasserman Schultz is, because at the tippy top, we have a governor who is not only incompetent, but he's also a fascist in many ways, because of what he just pulled with Rebecca Jones, who is the doctor who is exposing their cover-up for how bad COVID actually has been in this state.
Yeah.
So again,
but let me say though that kind of thing could happen in any state.
It could.
It really could. They're all run this. Look, like they're with very few
6
exceptions.
to 1, half a dozen of the
It
other.
doesn't really matter.
Right.
It really doesn't. If somebody feels that something is going to threaten them or their funding, they're going to do whatever they can to shut up that leak. So that's anywhere. I'm not going to just put that on DeSantis. And again, we have a very low bar here.
Very true. Last thing before we go off the air. We want to bring it back full circle to what we started this conversation with earlier. If this podcast teaches you guys anything, is the importance of building bridges, forming relationships, and finding ways to come together. The nonsense that is going on right now amongst all different members of left media, whether it's because of one person in particular who we don't have to mention, you know who he is, it has started this very hot button issue of whether or not we need to bring Medicare for all for a floor vote.
I'm so tired of
Here
this.
is the bottom line. Medicare for all needs to be brought for a vote, and it needs to be brought as soon as possible. Why? Because we cannot wait for Medicare for all anymore. You have one of the foremost doctors in the nation on COVID saying, yeah, you got to bring COVID to a floor for a vote. They may not care. And there are certainly people who may be on the, in that particular media sphere who are doing it strictly because of their own self-interests. Okay, fine. But amongst the people, this is the issue of our lifetime.
The infighting on the left is really annoying. So I won't participate in it.
No.
I won't have anything to do with it. I actually, if I
stick to the issues.
I just stick to the issues.
That's
it. People want to fight amongst yourselves, fight amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy for it. I really don't.
Who does have the energy,
Apparently,
quite
a lot
frankly?
of people on the left would love to eat their own.
That is not, and again, if you have an issue with how it's being presented, the one person who I am really upset, and Jen would agree, who has been taking flack, is David Sirota. David Sirota at least came on Jimmy's show and said, having a floor vote is a great idea, but you cannot go there as your only bullet in the chamber. You have to have like 7 to 10 different things that you have to bring. Yeah. This is how McConnell negotiates, who is the dirtiest son of a bitch who has ever run the Senate, maybe in the history of the country. He's more ruthless than LBJ was. To suggest that you can just bring a floor vote and that is going to be the answer, it is not what is going to get it done.
But see, my problem with it is that I like I said, I don't even remember when this was, but it's not enough. Like, okay, yeah, it's a great little idea. Get them to kind of vote for Medicare. Well, it's not going to pass. We know it's not going to pass, but we'll at least get a reading as to who's where and have people be accountable for their positions.
And
I get that.
It's going to, and as I said before, it's going to open up it's going to become a corporate media talking point. They'll have no choice. And the people that watch MSNBC and CNN religiously that can't get out of their own way, now they're going to start talking about Medicare for all and what the justification is.
I just think that that's a side note. And the bigger note is what I said the other day is, why do we just assume that Nancy Pelosi gets to be speaker? Why is there not another person in our House of Representatives? Why is there not another Democrat that's actually going to, no, not that exists that could do that job. I know there's plenty of people there that could do that job. It can't be rocket science because look at who's been doing it, but that's not the point. What I don't understand is why there's not a single fucking member of Congress that has willing to stand up to Nancy Pelosi and say, you know what? We don't think you're doing such a good job and money isn't the only thing we care about. And we would like to see somebody else. Why does nobody do that? Why is the best we could get them withholding their vote for a Medicare for all floor vote that we know won't go anywhere? I just think that, yes, Jimmy's brilliant. He came up with this idea to force their hand on a floor vote. Yes, I get it. That's great. But at the end of the day, they're still going to put in their vote for Nancy Pelosi. So what the hell difference does it make? So until they're willing to stand up against her, demanding a floor vote for Medicare for all is a pittance.
And not only that, but let's keep it honest, okay? You know, not only did AOC not get the committee spot that she was looking for, which is on energy, which is of course related to the Green New Deal. They not only did not give it to her, they gave it to Kathleen Rice, who is not only a blue dog, but she is somebody who actually challenged Pelosi for her seat. And she still got the committee. You know what that means? It means it's corporate versus non-corporate. No matter how nice you are, no matter how much you try to placate, if you are not on the corporate special interest payroll, you are an enemy of the Democratic establishment. And that is that. You are not going to change that. So you have to fight like the Tea Party used to fight John Boehner and Paul Ryan. If you do that, then the change can happen. You cannot, tiptoe around this anymore because people are getting desperate. And now that they want to pass a $600 one-time stimulus check in the dead of winter, I mean, they're really asking for it now. So we got to do something.
Alan is asking, am I willing to go to jail for Alan, I'd probably be willing to go to jail just for a good time. I don't think it would need to even be for justice, but I'm not sure the context of what you're asking. I mean, I'm not scared of going to jail if I'm doing something I believe I should be doing. So I guess I'm not exactly sure what the context is.
I just think a lot of people are afraid to take a chance.
And I got to tell you, that's something that's really interesting. So, okay, so somebody might be willing to go to jail for something, but they're not willing to stand up to Nancy Pelosi. Think about how cowardly, like these people can't even stand up to an 80-something-year-old woman.
And there's something to be said too, because if you think about it, the representatives, I don't know, I'm not sure how safe Marie Newman's district is, but I know AOC's district, Jamal Bowman's district, Cori Bush's district, Ilhan Omar's district. These are not just safe blues. These are super safe blues. So they are not putting themselves in harm's way in any way.
I just don't understand it. Like, and then the fact that they push back against this idea of just doing a minute, like, and I get it. Like, I don't agree with calling them sellouts and stuff.
Not at all.
That doesn't serve anything.
No.
But I don't understand why not one person out of the other, 434 that are not Nancy Pelosi couldn't stand up and say, you know what, maybe we need another option this time.
Yeah.
Like, why is it so
and again,
assumed?
Again, that's because, as we talked about, the influence of the corporate media, particularly in the Democratic Party as it stands, is immensely powerful. And I think most people would agree. We don't have time, but in their eyes, this is Pelosi's last hurrah for a number of reasons, if I may. For a number of reasons. Number one, she is not going to survive the midterms. Everyone knows that. There is going to be a Democratic primary for the presidency in 2024. You can bank on it, especially if Nina Turner gets into Congress. So aside from that, Pelosi is also in her 80s now. She is not going to have that opportunity to continue. The problem is the one that they are prepping to take over is Hakeem Jeffries in New York's, I think, 10th congressional district. This guy is the opposite of AOC in every sense of the way. This guy is bought and paid for by Wall Street 10 times over.
That's of course why they want him. They need someone else.
So,
all I care about is that.
For the New York DSA, for the New York Young Democrats, we know Carlos, who runs that organization. For those of you who are in New York and you want to know how to position your chess pieces right now, Hakeem Jeffries has to be primaried and taken out. That's the guy. Everybody needs to line up. There are tons of difficult representatives to deal with in politics, but Hakeem Jeffries, he is got to be the number one target, at least in the Northeast, because he is the heir apparent to Pelosi, and he is young, and he is as much in bed with Wall Street as anybody.
So we gotta fight that.
Absolutely. But like Eric said, the coalition is building every day, and we have to find ways to reach out, quite frankly, to a lot of Trump supporters, because they're populists and they don't go along with all of the rhetoric that Trump goes along with. We tell this story all the time. We went to Trump's rally in Sunrise a year ago. It was exactly a year ago, or like last November. The people that are the crazies that you see on TV, they make up maybe 5 to 10% of the actual people that show up at the rallies.
But yet, when you refer to a whole group of people as deplorables, it doesn't win them over.
No, it doesn't.
Shocking.
Not at all. But if we continue to extend the olive branch and make it so that it is strictly about the bread and butter issues, not wedge issues, not things that we know are going to divide people, Medicare for all, universal basic income, living wage, federal jobs guarantee, an infrastructure bill built around clean energy jobs. Who doesn't agree with that? Not many people.
Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi doesn't, but
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So there's always going to be those individuals. Don't focus on the ones that are elected. Focus on the people that can make them elected or unelected. That's the key. And let's see what Alan has to say. Right now, we're talking about forcing the vote of Medicare for whatever you want to that. We can build. Yes. Listen, we are in favor of the Medicare for all vote, but it cannot be the only thing that you're fighting for.
Look, I go back. Bernie handed over his support without demanding anything.
Nothing.
He had nothing.
Gave it up for nothing.
He got no tangibles. He has nothing. No power.
That's why having.
But they got some little planning.
And the reality is, the pressure works. It does. Because let me tell you, the more this thing grows over the next 2 weeks before the election in Georgia, they're going to try to build it up. And you know what? Everything in many ways will come down to the election in Georgia. At the end of the day, this ain't going away. This is going to get bigger every day. Yeah. And they have already decided that they're daring us. They are daring us to get violent. I don't know.
Well, but it's inevitable.
$600 check, that is not going to keep people in their house.
I think everybody who gets a $600 check should maybe take them all together and start a bonfire in front of somebody's house to get their attention. Because maybe they
want everybody to take the $600, pool it together, invest it in the stock market, and maybe they'll hit the lottery, and then it'll be worth something. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be done. I don't know. All I do know is we are heading in a very interesting direction going forward. Leave Britney. I mean Bernie. That's funny, Shaman. And look, like I said, we love Bernie. He lit the flame.
And it's true, but he didn't demand anything for his support.
He lit the flame. He lit the flame. Now it's on us to carry the torch. Yeah. And that's how it has to be.
No, I don't blame Bernie, and I really don't. But do I think that he handed over his support without making any demands? Yes, I do think that.
Alan brings up a great point, and we'll leave with this. This is all about building a labor party.
Yeah.
That's where it's at, because that crosses party lines. It really does. Remember, I think Richard Trumka, who was head of the AFL-CIO, he endorsed Trump in 2016. And this is, again...
We are the labor party.
We are
the labor party.
We are. That's what the progressive movement is. It's the labor movement.
It should be. And I also think that is what I think is one of the problems with the Green Party, is that it doesn't have that wide appeal. Just even by the name alone, it comes off as a little bit just like hippy dippy, lefty, progressive, as opposed to Labor Party,
Correct.
Which is all, that's what we really need. We need a Labor Party. So
we do. We need the Labor Party. And I actually think, and we'll conclude with this, I think it's much, much harder to co-opt this movement by saying you're pro-labor versus I'm a progressive.
Yeah.
Anybody can say they're a progressive.
Clearly.
But you can't say you're pro-labor if you are not in favor of Medicare for all and a federal jobs guarantee or even UBI. You just can't. It's not possible.
Well, or how about people that get labor union support, but they support the TPP?
I think that we're heading in a very unique direction with the channel and the type of conversations that we want to have. One thing I wanted to propose to you, and I'll propose it now since we haven't even talked about it.
You can talk publicly about
Yes, I actually think that we should have I don't want to say like a debate, but I think we should have a panel discussion with two people. If you guys want to potentially make suggestions, we would love to hear it. I think we should have a discussion about an advocate for UBI and an advocate for modern monetary theory or a federal jobs guarantee. And
well, that's not a debate.
No, I think you could have both, quite frankly. I don't think there's a reason not to.
A lot of these things, like, I don't want to debate these things.
No.
This is not worthy of a debate. I don't want to debate what we need to do. We know what we need to do.
We need to do a lot, but we're on our way.
Yes, but I'm not going to debate Medicare for all. I'm not going to debate any of those.
I agree. Medicare for all at this point is not up for debate.
No.
It is what should be the law of the land, and to accept anything less. Remember, there's a lot of people. You know what's interesting, though? Because of this pressure that Jimmy has started and all these people are all getting involved with now, I'm starting to see even the centrist people starting to say, you know, I think a public option would be a good idea, you know, but keep pushing, because even if they're willing to say, well, would you take a public option? Is that good enough?
Well, the problem with the Democrats is normally they say, oh, please let me have this piece of shit and ask for more, instead of going in and asking for everything.
You know what is even more amazing? Do you guys not understand how feckless the Democratic Party is? Do you not understand how much pressure, if you pressured them and they actually thought their jobs were in jeopardy?
But their jobs aren't in jeopardy because their jobs are there at the behest of corporations.
That's correct. But
so
the second
there
is a citizens uprising, they are sitting ducks. Like they really are. They're so feckless. They don't stand for anything. And like I said, our congressional representative does nothing. Nothing. She does less than nothing.
There's photo ops.
There's photo ops. She's doing photo ops in the middle of a pandemic. But that's even worse. That is much worse. At least we're trying to build community gardens. We're trying to aid people in whatever capacity we can. Could you imagine what we'd be able to do if we had a federal seat?
Yeah.
Do you know the kind of work we'd be doing down here right now in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah.
We'd be making sure everybody is not losing their home and has food on the table. It's not that hard. But again, corporate career politician versus those who want to serve their community. So we're going to get there. We're extremely grateful for everybody.
Please subscribe if you're not subscribed.
Correct.
Check out previous episodes. Please like, share, comment. All of those things really help us.
And you also, very important, need to watch, even if you're watching live or if you are just simply playing it, streaming it. Very important. We need to get to 4,000 view hours. We're almost halfway there.
Guys,
almost halfway there.
If you put on a video, one of our things, just let it play. I don't even care if you watch it. You don't even have to watch it. Just let it play.
Yeah.
Let it play. Go take a shower, come back, whatever. It doesn't matter.
If you want us to be able to have a super chat, if you want us to be able to really build our Patreon and really build this thing, we need you guys watching hours. We totally need you to watch. It's really great entertainment, really incredible stuff. And if you do watch, I'm totally not going away. I'm totally not going away. Where's my
I hid it from you.
No, you shouldn't have hid it. Bring it over here. I want to see it right now. Hold on, people need to see it. Oh, let me have it. Totally have to have it. You people totally need to watch this podcast. It's really incredible. This Jen, she's really tremendous. A really incredible person. That Debbie Wasserman, she's a terrible, terrible person. You know, she wants to kick me out of Mar-a-Lago. That's totally not fair. I've been living there for a very, very long time, and I totally earned that property. I bought it when it was low. I'll sell it when it's high. Totally, really incredible time. And this podcast, it's the greatest podcast. I come on here all the time.
He does come on here all the time.
This is the only place if I'm not in Mar-a-Lago, I totally come on the show because it's a really great place to be. Where else would you want to be? And I've got a lot of free time on my hands. So if I'm not golfing, this is where I'm going to be. And you totally have to watch this podcast. You got to tell everybody about it because it's really, really incredible stuff. Really, really great. I am really tired of having to hear from that buffoon. He does not belong in politics anymore.
The Bernie mask creeps me out.
No,
Bernie mask.
I'm not gonna put on the mask.
The Bernie mask.
You don't have to do that. But listen to Jen. We are building a political revolution in this country, and we are doing a really incredible job.
Yeah, so guys,
we are doing
share.
a really incredible job. So you have to like the video, you have to comment, you have to share, and you have to subscribe. And make sure you are watching all of our podcasts.
Also
Really?
check out generationalchange.com. If you guys are local, sign up to volunteer with us.
We need to have as many people supporting Jen and coming out to the events. They are giving people food. They are supplying a community garden. They are doing all these wonderful things.
And we'll give them t-shirts.
And we'll give you a free t-shirt. Who doesn't want? I can't give you free healthcare, but I could give you a free t-shirt. Is that not a good start? That's a really, really great start. So we definitely need that.
So yeah, guys. So if you're local, please come out and help us with one of our GenCore things. We have fun.
We definitely have fun. We have a lot of fun.
You're just really going at it.
I just got to let everybody know. Oh, come on, man. We're talking about.
All right. You're going into like autopilot.
I don't have corn pop around here. Yeah, but that's for sure, because we are definitely starting something special. But I keep telling y'all, you got to help Jen, because I got to get her to Capitol Hill, because Slick Willie can't be there all by himself. I can't take Hillary anymore. I need a new flavor. Come on, help Jen, please. You know you're good for it.
Oh my God.
All right, guys. We've really enjoyed having you all here today. This is one of the longest shows we've done, $1:45.
That's long for me to sit here, and I'm starting to get a little clammy. It's time to go.
Yeah, it's time to eat. It's only 5:37. I don't know. Maybe we
used
do
to
later.
Being done more like at 10 at night and first eating dinner.
Yeah, so this is a little bit more appropriate timing. But hey, you know what? The more guests that demand to come on the podcast, the more we're probably going to have to be doing these shows.
Well, no, and the truth is, what do you guys think? Like, I've traditionally been doing interviews just, on my own, and oh God, accent guy. You're accent guy. Yeah, he's just accent guy. But this was the first time we've really done an interview live. Normally I do them on my own. I mean, we have guests on our live streams, but usually my interviews. But what do you guys think of that? I kind of liked it that people could ask questions. We'll see. It's just, we can't always do it at a consistent time when you do it that way. That's the only problem.
No, I think that this guy Corey's got a good idea, and I really think
thank you, Corey, for that. Thank you. Now I'm going to have to live with this. But so, if you guys like the idea of us doing some of our interviews live, I have no problem doing that, but it does make it harder for us to be consistent time-wise with interviews, because we have to, accommodate people's schedules.
You got to do it for the family. You got to do it for Jen. She's a really great girl.
All right.
So
you're not getting the Brando right now.
No, I think
Can I get AOC to have dinner with you? I couldn't even get AOC to come meet me in Washington. So, I wouldn't be banking on that.
Never go against the family. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, she was one of my slate mates for BNC, and we went there last year for the BNC summit, and she didn't come and say hi or anything. So I can't get her to come and say hi to me. Let alone go out with you.
Make her come out one time.
Plus, I'm pretty sure she's spoken for. Doesn't Alex have a significant other? I think she does.
Yeah, she's not been talking to me lately, but I don't know what's happening with that.
You need to stop now. All right. Good night, guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.